I love your book because it helps you get into scripture and pray for kids, but also has a sense of humor. And I love, like, at the beginning of your book, you talk about how you can look at this married couple and they're holding hands and they look so sweet. And isn't that wonderful? But your friend said something like, when I think of my husband, I want to run over him sometimes, and of course it's
Yes,
said
I mean,
in
it is
jest.
so true, and she made me laugh, that girl, because she was like, "Yes, I see this young couple, and I just think I want a marriage like that," and then she thinks, "Oh."
So, how do you think prayer, like, kinda softens our heart to
Mm,
be more like, "Okay, wait a minute. I guess I would not run him over.
yeah,
I guess I
exactly,
would choose something
exactly.
else."
Well, it's interesting you asked that because a lot of secular research is coming out about the benefits of prayer. Like, it gives us things like a higher satisfaction in marriage, a greater sense of emotional well being. They've linked it to even things like better sex.
Yeah.
But one of the things that prayer does, and I think this was a Wall Street Journal article that came out on the science of prayer, um, it gives us a chance to kind of calm down. And even if we are feeling still annoyed or mad at our spouse, they were late again, they didn't remember to pick up what they said, they left the toilet seat up, whatever it is, a big thing or a little thing that has gotten on our last nerve. When we step back and take a moment to pray, whether we're praying together or we're praying on our own, that does two things. It gives us a chance to calm down, step back a little bit, but it also reinforces the idea that we're on the same team. And honestly, I think that is such an important point for marriages to remember because,
Yeah.
we get in an argument with our spouse and we think, oh, I want to win this. But we have to remember it's not him and her, or it's not me and him, whatever. It's both of us on the same team. And when I win, that's a loss for him. Instead, we want to have a win for the team. And so I think prayer really reinforces the idea that, hey, we're on the same team here.
And I think the devil messes with you, right? Like, the devil's telling you, like, "Oh, he's against you, this is
Absolutely.
terrible." But when you pray, you kind of then realize, "Wait, I've stepped away from this. I can be calmer." And I realize, "Wait a minute, what is the truth here?" No, the truth is we are really truly on the same team. I wanna circle back to what you had said, how most people in social media would say, "Oh, yeah, this is what I'd pray for. I wanna pray that my husband would get fixed, that he would change." And so when people pick up your book, it's not this magic book that, like, "Oh, if you pray these 5 prayers, your
Right.
husband will turn out exactly like you want." And I think it helps us to frame it to think, well, would you want a book like that for you? You want your husband
Yeah.
to pick up a book and
Yeah.
that he magically just wants to fix you? And I think it helps us understand, wait a minute, he's a human being. He doesn't need fixing. We just kind of speak to that. Why do we
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
do we go to that so often? Like, I just wish you'd fix him, Lord.
Well, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I will because it's in the book. When Robbie and I were first married, we had a real clash in expectations. We'd grown up, both of our parents loved each other. We had happy upbringings, but his dad worked really hard. He left the house before dawn in the morning and he came home at night late. His mom really took care of everything in the kitchen, from the groceries to the cleaning to everything. I had a dad who was much more hands on. He would swing by the store on the way home from work, he would help clean up the dishes. So you can imagine what happened. We had this tiny little newlywed kitchen, big enough for just the two of us and maybe a pot or a pan. And Robbie just didn't help. He wasn't trying to be mean or unkind. He just had never had that modeled for him. And I'm thinking, what's the matter with him? I work too. And so, sometimes I would bang the pots and pans together to get his attention. Sometimes I'd give him the silent treatment. He was probably thinking, wow, what have I done today to get all this time to read the newspaper or whatever? But um, I remember we were taking a class at the time at our church on communion with God and learning to hear God, learning to talk to God. And so I just threw that out there. I was like, God, can't you get Robbie to help me? I'm just as tired as he is when we get home from work. And I really felt the Lord just gently whispered in my heart and said, Jodie, if you'll stop nagging and just trust me, I will shape your husband into a better man than you could choose, even if like I got a blank check to do all the designing I wanted.
Right.
And I wish I could say right then that I made this resolution never to nag again and always to trust. That's always a battle I think I'll face my whole life, is trusting God. But I did. I thought, okay, I'm not going to mention this again. Arlene, the very next night, we both got home from work. I went into the little kitchen and he came around the corner. He said, is there anything I can do to help? He hadn't said that in a year of marriage. And
Oh
I
my
thought, oh my
goodness.
gosh. And I burst into tears. And he's probably thinking, wait, you would cry when I'm not helping. Now you're crying when I'm
Oh,
offering
yeah.
help. But God is just so faithful. And he continued to work in Robbie and in me to, shape
Yeah.
both of us into marriages. We heard Dr. Tony Evans speak one time, and he said that he and his wife would always try to serve one another like more than the other person. And he said he got so frustrated because his wife was out serving him. She was doing it
She's so
better.
good at it.
Yeah, and Robbie and I heard that and we thought, what a wonderful goal. We didn't know at the time that what we were doing when we adopted that
Mhm.
let's serve one another in love. We didn't know a couple things. One, we didn't know we were going by that Philippians 2 passage that says, in humility, consider others' needs ahead of your own. We didn't know we were leaning into the Ephesians 5, God's great prescription for marriage, where he says, walk in love, giving yourselves up for one another as Christ gave himself for you, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. We had no awareness of what the Bible taught about how we should treat one another. But we also didn't know, and this is something that science is discovering, and I had so much fun doing the research for this book because I was digging into the Bible, but also into different behavioral and marital studies and things. And apparently, the more we show kindness to one another, generosity, whether it's something big, like choosing to go to the company party that you really don't want to go to, you don't even like your husband's coworkers, but you get your pretty dress on and you go and you are cheerful, or something just like bringing your spouse a cup of coffee in the morning. These little acts of kindness, of generosity, they create what researchers call an upward spiral in your home so that you both benefit. Like you think, okay, I'm bringing him the coffee, that's an act of love on my part. But he will then respond the gratitude. And I'm not saying one time, I don't want a listener to go out and go, I brought my husband a cup of coffee and he ignored me. But
Doesn't happen.
if this is done as a pattern over time, this kindness consistently demonstrated really can change the climate in your home.
Yes. It is like the law of reciprocity. If someone does something nice for you over and over and over again, like, after a while, if you're a good and decent person, like, you're gonna do something nice back,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it is an interesting thing that it's not that you're doing it because, okay, like, tit for tat, like, "I'm gonna do this, and now you better do this, or else I'm gonna be mad, it's not working," but
right.
it is the climate of service, and why not you? Like, why don't you start it? Because I know people are listening and they think, "Well, that's nice, I would do that," but then he would do nothing. Right,
Right,
right.
right, right. But you know what? If that's the case, you just take
Mhm.
delight because you are reflecting the gospel.
Yeah.
It's not to just dive too deep too quick, but that was one of the unexpected huge blessings for me as I worked on this book. We all know you go to marriages and you hear why God ordained marriage and kind of that it does reflect his love for his church, the bride. But as I really dug into it and began seeing all the different things scripture says and talking to other couples, I realized that we really do get to partner with the Lord, 100 times a day in our
Yeah.
marriages as we choose to submit to the other, choose to give ourselves up for the other. And even if it's not reciprocated, you can think, you know what? I am identifying in this with Christ who gave himself up for me. And I'm doing this out of gratitude, maybe not for my spouse, but for what Jesus did for me.